So we got the email from Jacob announcing the hazmat suit competition, and Nat and I were not able to be near each other during the course of the summer, so we thought that it would be a fun way for us to sort of like digitally spend time together designing this and being able to hang out.
The reason why I want to get involved in this competition is I feel like it's really important during this pandemic period, learn how to use our design ideas to suit this world. Another thing is I'm a new student here and I want to learn more about our student lives.
So what motivated me to participate was my interest in fashion design, and the inspiration was, I think, in light of the Black Lives Matter movement that's been going on over the summer. It kind of inspired me to create a piece that kind of spoke to that situation.
Alina and I have a really similar aesthetic in some way. We have similar aesthetic when we thinking about idea. We sometimes pull out exactly the same reference to clothing, and we both said that we want to do something about African American, because I think it would be really cool to have African American pieces in the walkway.
For this design, we wanted to create a suit that was practical and functional, but also had some fun elements. I think that architecture plays a big part in it, in design in general. I think that even in normal circumstances, architecture is so important in the way that we interact with the world and the way we interact with each other. And especially in these times, I think it's important for us to be aware of our role as designers and the things that we do, because we have a huge responsibility to the public to keep the public safe and to bring awareness and to make things beautiful as well.
I think the pandemic has been a very unprecedented times that has changed a lot of perspectives of how we see different things. One of the perspectives that occurred to me was the need to be out of my own comfort zone of being in the house, of trying to get up, being out. What I realized is that many friends and people were trying to start connecting to the nature. That was how it all started. So that was when I started going to the Argo River in Ann Arbor. And the river has been a great influence for me because I will bring my inflatable kayaks out on the river. And that was where I started, just being out in the summer and just looking at the river and the reflections. But it made me have a thought about how a human being could possibly be inflated.
So the design itself is inspired a lot by hoop skirts and other distancing kind of fashion throughout the decades. And we got all of the materials from hardware stores and grocery stores and from around our house, things we already had, because we really wanted to keep it accessible, kind of the idea that anyone could make this. And the tubing, or the circles, are all made of different kinds of plumbing tubing, and the connections are either basswood sticks or these posts that we found at Meyer that are reflective at the top, and we just pop those off and use those. And then all of it is kind of glued and taped and tied together with super glue, packaging tape, embroidery thread.
I feel like my design is quite simple, but I hope it can create a comfortable and convenient suit for us, for the public, since we are using this kind of materials much more. It's more like a clothing for us, something more about having a pocket here, pocket there, so we can put some our disinfection supplies in our suit, so that's create a more convenient situation for people wearing this kind of suit.
I mean, I think definitely because there is the necessity for social distancing, very much has to do with space, so it's definitely something that architects can influence. And so I think it's now more than ever, as opposed to sort of thinking about architecture in the more conventional sense, thinking about how space is affecting our relationships with other people is really important, and I think that that's something that needs to be explored more.
Right now I'm wearing a kind of hoop of PVC pipe, 1-inch PVC, with shower curtains and curtain rings. I wanted everything to be kind of in situ materials, so things that you can just sort of find around the house. I ended up the challenge of this thing was bending the PVC pipe, and I actually found a method where you cap one end of it, put some sand in the oven, fill the PVC pipe with super hot sand, and then it essentially turns into like a snake, like a piece of rubber, and you can actually bend it, and I bent it into these loops. and then dumped the sand out, and then added a rough pass at a gradient with some spray paint and some suspenders and some social cue cards.
We do sketching together, like we do sketching together to think what kind of idea, like for example, the oversized suits, the bubble jacket part. It's like remind me about hip hop culture of African American, like, and I feel like really speak to the culture. And then later we think about the nursing hat, but we want to be more cultural, so we changed it to be a do-rag. After I sold this jacket to a couple Asian people, and they tell me they remind it traditional Korean clothing, like how they cut the clothing being cut, and also the long arm part is like remind people about Chinese upper house clothing. So I was insane because I intentionally to do African American culture, but it's like at last my unconsciously of my own culture shine a little bit in this project.
The suit, I think, it's more figurative in a way that it kind of speaks to, it gives the impression of having to stay 6 feet apart. I think our design was more inspired by capturing certain elements from a hazard suit, and then also certain elements that speak to, you know, like different cultures. As far as efficiency, I think we were more interested in kind of pushing our design and being as creative and as like radical as possible.
I don't know, I was kind of concerned with being back in person because this hazmat suit is actually designed to start to interact with people again, and we had been on Zoom for about 6 months at that point, so I was kind of worried that I was going to suck at interacting with people again. So some of these cards, obviously they're like adjustable and stuff, but they are sort of reminders of basic human interaction. Things like listen to somebody when they say their name because you can't see their name on the Zoom squares, or they can hear all of your noises, there's no mute button here. Things like that, and then just sort of like references for how to have small talk and conversations again.
So the main idea was this shirt or kind of jumpsuit that she's wearing through that is inflated, and what we see is the different air pockets are connected together through the tubes. What it meant to say is that, is it possible in the future times where a user of the hazmat suit would be kind of self-independent in a sense? You're kind of depending on these air pockets for sustenance, and if one runs out you can always connect to the other, and it's just trying to show the idea of social distancing and of how people feel uncomfortable with meeting people, and how this thing could potentially protect not only just the body as an armature, but as well as just like an air tank. An air tank that's built within the body, and what we see here, the way it has been installed is that it's been seamed together to create these different pockets, and here we are having different valves. These are just some of the bike valves that we used in installing this inflatable pockets. The way people kind of design in parts is kind of a very important emphasis, so we sketch things out on paper first and we see how everything kind of mapped up together as a trial on paper before transferring the designs that we have, the panels, on this latex and cutting them out. So I would say it's a process of transference and collaborative design.
Designers kind of have a responsibility to everyone because they are designing the places that we live in. And I think especially considering the social political climate that we have, there needs to be more of a humanist approach to design. It's not being educated and it's not being expressed as well. Definitely hearing about it at Taubman, but besides that, there's still like this idea that there's a canon and there is something that's already established that isn't representing the diverse population that we have here.
I think all design fails. I think that's what makes design inherently constructive, and kind of constructive criticism is what design is built off of and how it keeps evolving. And without criticism, design no longer can be design.
Design, or at least the people who are critiquing it, can push the boundaries of what can be represented in design work. I think I think people are always going to be interested in exploring different ideas, but I think it's also about the people who are on the other side that are critiquing, allowing those ideas to be celebrated.
I think architecture and design is essential for changing our understanding of the world. Currently there's a lot of conversation around social design and sort of the significance of social design and how design can actually be that sort of underestimated element in that. And I think COVID is just another layer and sort of this level of anxiety going around. I think design will essentially, could be a cure in a way. There's so much layered into design that hopefully it has some sort of impact down the road.
In terms of making something that would be a cure-all for a scenario, we had a go. We had a go at it, and I think that it can also be prompting and triggering other ideas to spawn and to formulate, which is also a key factor in design where you're passing the torch. It's never individual and independent. It's always a collective effort with people speaking to each other and in conversation, visual conversation, that's crucial because nothing happens in a vacuum.
Kind of to my point earlier that this idea of social design is huge, but also health conscious design. And I'm actually really starting to look at the effects that design and space and form can have on a person's health and well-being. And I'm curious about what that form could look like, or if there is sort of a universal form that maybe would be effective in terms of health, be it just enormous amounts of space or height or beauty. I'm not sure, but I'm gonna for sure start to explore those avenues a lot more. Maybe help prevent something like this in the future.
I mean, it's a simple answer, but I think we should always strive to make a better world and try to improve things in the best way that we can with the talents that we're given and the education that we're given. I think it's important to know where our value is and to utilize that to the best of our abilities. I think we'll learn to overcome the obstacles that have been put in front of us and learn to adapt and be flexible with everything that's going on and new modes of working, new modes of production, and new modes of architecture and design.